Good morning. Today is Friday, August 4th, 2023, and we are in Hartville, Ohio, to conduct an interview for the Kent State Guardsmen Oral History Project. So thank you for agreeing to participate. We have two subjects today. What is your name and where are you from?
Barry Morris, Kent, Ohio.
Dennis Breckenridge.
Hartville.
Hartville.
And in how long and in what capacity did you serve in the Ohio National Guard?
I served my 6-year obligation. When I left, I was a staff sergeant.
I was
6 years?
nothing.
No, you were 6 years, and you also were a sergeant.
Don't remember all that.
Yes.
What units were you a part of?
107th Armored Cavalry G Troop out of Ravenna.
And why did you join the National Guard?
Actually, because I couldn't join anything else. I'd been turned down by the Marines, I'd been turned down by the Army, official Army, and the Air Force, because they said I had a hernia. But when I went up for my draft physical, they said I didn't have a problem, so kind of knew I was just going in for the body count. So a buddy of mine stopped and said, "Hey, you want to join the National Guard?" And I said, "What's that?" He said, "I don't know, they go up there and drive tanks around and have fun and stuff." And I said, "Sure, let's go." Went up, took a urine test, and we were in.
Mr. Breckenridge, why did you join the Guard?
Not to go to Vietnam.
Yeah. Who wanted to go to Vietnam? It's about this story.
Yeah, supposedly to protect your own country. And,
So what years were you in?
1965 to 71.
That sounds real.
you were out in 70, right after.
Yeah, I can't remember.
His 6 years, he ended in 1970. Matter of fact, he was supposed to have been done. They always gave you the last month off in April, but they extended him. So,
And the reason they extended him was because
he was going to Kent.
Well, no, we had our stuff on the drill floor, all of our equipment, and we had to meet every other week because we were on the list to go to Vietnam. The reason we didn't go was because of the riot, Teamster strike in Kent State. It's the only reason we didn't go to Vietnam.
What were some of the reasons that your Guard unit was called out?
Well, it was crowd control riots. Started with the riot in Huff,
Oh, yeah.
then Glenville, then Worcester and Akron, then the Teamster strike, and then Kent State. It's all to take care of the people in the state, so that they had homes to come home to.
Well, speaking of home, when you during your time in the Guard, what was your job? What was your full-time job during your years in the Guard?
Basically, mine was just all tanks.
Yeah, but where did you work? Besides the guards, where did you work?
Oh, I worked at Morgan Adhesive Company in Stowe for 37 years, but all that time, I was in the Guard during that time.
And what did you do there?
A lot of jobs. I ended up being a division manager of manufacturing.
Mr. Breckenridge, what were you doing for a job in the late 60s and early 70s?
Driving a truck.
Truck driver.
Yeah.
Well, he went from tire builder to truck driver.
See, I can't put myself together on that. I know I drove truck, but
Yeah.
I want it rounded.
What are your memories of being deployed to Kent, you know, in May of 1970?
My memories are we came back from being on patrol on the road, drive on it was actually what's 76 now, interstate, but it was only open to Youngstown, so we drove to Youngstown and turned around and came back. That was our duty, to make sure no one was throwing stuff off of the overpasses. Came back in, and it was time to eat. I made sure that my men were fed, and then I was gonna get something to eat because I always ate last. And I was just getting my chow, and the captain came out and yelled, "Stop what you're doing, we're going to Kent." Everybody kind of chuckled, and you know, he was sort of a joker sometimes. And then he started screaming and yelling. He said, "I'm serious, we're going to Kent right now." So everybody grabbed their stuff, and we got on Jeeps and personnel carriers and headed to Kent.
Mr. Breckenridge, do you have any memories of being sent up to Kent?
Heard of it. I know I was there.
Just got in your PC and headed out.
Well, before I had memory.
I know.
I don't have any now.
I'll help you
Was-
fill. I'll help you fill in the
Very
blanks.
helpful.
That's okay, man.
Well, can you describe the scene when you're arriving into this college town?
Oh yeah, pretty vividly. The first thing that happened was a big rock got thrown through the windshield, and my driver got a mouthful of glass, and I had cuts under my eyes and stuff, and we had to go get checked out. He went to the hospital. They just checked me out and found out I didn't have any glass in my eyes, just cuts under my eyes. So taped up the windshield on the Jeep and headed on down into Kent. But they were jumping up and down, had flares or torches or whatever, and they were pulling up pieces of pavement and throwing it at all the Jeeps and stuff that came downtown. And whatever else they were throwing, I don't know. They were wild.
They destroyed downtown.
Do you remember what day you arrived?
I don't know, maybe it might have been a Friday night, I'm not sure.
What do you recall about the morning of May 4th?
Well, we were driving around, my driver and I were in a Jeep, driving around on the campus like we were supposed to do, and check this, check that. And a friend of mine was up on the top of the hill with this one building, and he stopped me and he said, "Hey," he said, "I just want to let you know," he said, "at noon there's going to be some bad stuff happening." He said, I don't want to see you get hurt." I said, "Okay." I took that information to my captain, and I said, "This guy's not some kind of liar or BS or whatever. He's genuinely concerned." He had been in the Navy, so he had his 4 years behind him. He was just letting me know that something was supposed to happen. That's what he'd heard, been passed around as he was going through classes.
And then what are your memories of how things escalated that day?
Well, just about like he said, at about noon, the crowd started gathering over on
The common.
the Commons. And when they started doing that, we were ordered to go into this one area down below the hill, and that's where we were. We were lined up in formation at the bottom of the hill when they were gathering over in the Commons. I guess the show of force, that's pretty much what I got. And then from there, we were ordered up the hill.
Do you have specific memories about the volley of gunfire?
Yes. I was coming back up the hill. Actually, I had a grenade launcher which he's using for tear gas. And I was down on the commons kneeling down, and I was shooting tear gas over into the crowd like I was told to do. And I turned around to tell somebody I didn't have any more tear gas, and there was nobody behind me. They were all going up the hill, which is kind of a surprise to me. So I turned around and started double timing, trying to catch up to the rest of the troop, and I got hit in the side of the face with a rock, and it knocked my tear gas, my mask loose. So I got a big mouthful of tear gas. Finally caught up to him. Right when I caught up to him, that's when I heard the firing. They started firing when I was still going up to them. I just assumed that we were being overtaken. That's why they were shooting. So I turned around, I fired 2 shots, and that was it. It was all over.
Mr. Breckenridge, do you have any recollections about this moment, around the noon hour?
Do you want me to speak for what you told me? Okay, what he has told us over the years, and that before he started getting his illness, he was up the hill followed up the hill with the troop. He's also being a sergeant. He was behind the ones that were in front. They had stopped at the top of the hill. He heard what started the shooting. He heard a single shot that came down, and it echoed in his ear to where he literally ducked, turned, and looked up. He thought for sure it came from the top of a building. And that was even in his deposition and statement. He heard the single shot. With that, the volley of shooting started out towards the crowd. He shot in the air, but when he noticed they were actually shooting in the crowd, his men were in front of him, he could not shoot into the crowd. He started telling them, because he heard his commanders telling him to cease fire behind him. So he was going on, patting them, cease fire, telling them to stop shooting. So, but he definitely heard the single shot in the before they started shooting.
What did your guard unit do in the hours immediately after this? You recollect, kind of what happened in the hours after the shooting?
We marched back down the hill, back down into the parking area where we first started. And we were just standing there in a line, and I know everyone was thinking the same thing I was thinking. Are we just going to stand here and get shot? Because we didn't take any defensive position at all. And it's about that time was when my friend Denny fell on the ground, and I thought he was having a heart attack, so I was over trying to recuperate him and just rescue him, unbuttoning his shirt so he could get some air and stuff, and then the ambulance came and took him away, and I went with the ambulance.
Do you remember if your commanding officers offered any direction to your unit in the hours or days after this?
Well, that I don't. When I got back from the hospital, I was told that we were going to go to a certain building, and I don't remember what building it was. We were going to go give a deposition to the State Highway Patrol. Then we also were told we were going to give a deposition to the FBI. I'm not sure of the time frame difference, but it was 2 separate depositions.
What do you recall about the media coverage after all this happened?
Well, the media coverage was never in our favor. Only Channel 8, which was, I think it was, I don't know, it might have been WJW, I don't remember now, it's Fox 8 now. But they were the only ones that ever did anything favorable as far as news to the Guard. They actually reported what was happening on both sides and didn't just report it biased on one side. And that's why anybody during that time, if they gave an interview, it was only to Channel 8 News. That's it. We didn't talk to anybody else. We're sort of like Trump.
Do you recall the mood at weekend drill? You know, in the weeks and or months, you know, after this happened. So everybody goes home, and then everybody goes to weekend drill after this. I mean,
Nobody talked about it. Wasn't part of the conversation. We had other things to do. You know, we were there to do specific jobs, and that's what we did. And as far as I know, no one really talked about it.
And Denny was not allowed to talk about it because he was in the hospital for several days afterwards. And as Barry was telling you, with the stuff that was, the rocks and slag that was thrown at them, one of the things with him is he took him to the hospital. What they found when they got his, again, they had their army fatigues, their big jackets and protection gear. Denny had, from where he was hit from rocks, his whole chest covered in bruises. In the hospital, the doctors were afraid that a blood clot was going to go to the lungs or something like that. Was also part of the reason they kept him so long in the hospital. And he was directed, no TV, no interviews. He wasn't allowed to do anything once he came home. And he was done with his service with the National Guard. So he was not back to the barracks or anything after that. And but prior to that, as you were asking Barry, leading up to it, is he came from the trucker strike, as Barry was saying, going up and down 76, and they came into Kent. His particular group of men, net and jeeps running around, he ran into all kinds of students causing trouble and trying to set fires and doing things like that, and they were really technically not allowed to do anything to him other than chase them around, you know, at that point. The Kent police, whenever you could get them, they had their hands full of downtown and everything. But when he finally was able to give the deposition, he gave the FBI first. And he picked out several students there that he didn't know he knew, but one of them that was shot. So.
how were you notified that you would be involved in the investigation and trial?
By telephone, I'm sure. I don't know if we ever got any letters or anything. We're just notified by phone that you have to show up. I think by that time we all had attorneys. We had one attorney that was assigned to us by the National Guard.
That was Lambrose.
The one before that.
One before Lambrose?
Yeah, he was an actual guards person. And I remember him telling us, what you guys need to do is get yourself a good lawyer. And at that point I thought we were gonna go to jail, we're gonna lose everything that we had and all that kind of stuff. And so I don't know who contacted Lambrose, our attorney, but
No.
maybe,
We were informed.
maybe he just volunteered, but
Yeah, we were informed, as you say, a phone call, but then right afterwards, after the depositions and all this stuff was done, we got a letter, a suit. We were served, and that we were being sued for $10 million.
Wow.
And they literally told us, the attorney, not Lambrose, but the first attorney you're talking about told us we had just bought our first house and they said, get rid of it. You're gonna lose everything. It's what we were advised.
Yeah, that was the first attorney, right?
Yeah, that was the first attorney. He says, you're gonna lose everything, get rid of it. And we did.
And right after that, I remember getting the papers, not for the $10 million suit, but I remember getting the papers served saying that I was going to court along with 7 other guardsmen
That was, yeah,
for murder and civil rights violations.
yeah. And that was after the first trial that
That
Denny
was
and I
really
came
some
in.
disturbing news.
Yeah. So we got before you got yours, after they went to court, and I was supposed to testify, immediately afterwards, and it wasn't even a week, we were sent a letter releasing Danny from all of that. They didn't want to hear from us.
No.
So, yeah, we got a letter telling us we had been released, an official letter that we had been released from that suit. And that they were coming back, what was it, how many was it, 13 to begin with? Went down to 9 or something, how many was it?
I forget how many in the beginning, but it ended up being 8.
8 at the end, okay. But see, we were
I
told.
believe that
at the
started
beginning.
in the low 40s, and then maybe
Yeah.
42 were on the initial, and then it went
Just
down.
kept going down,
Yeah.
and I think when we got our notice, it was down to 13. And that we were told, oh, you won't be called. No, we wouldn't be called because, we could prove these guys' depositions, what they were being sued over, were falsified.
Right.
Mr. Morris, do you have a sense of, why were you among this 8? Of all that had originally been on this statement, how did they narrow it down?
Because I fired my gun 2 times.
But I think 29 guardsmen fired their gun.
I don't know.
And what's funny, he fired his gun, but he said he fired his in the air, but he still fired his gun. But he was dropped. As soon as we went up to that one hearing, and they wouldn't let me testify, we were dropped.
When all of this preliminary, legal proceedings happened before the trial, I'm curious to know what are these conversations like with your wife at home? How are you guys handling this?
Actually, we didn't talk about it a lot.
No, we didn't.
Really?
It was just all,
I was busy.
it was pretty much all on my shoulders, I just I took it and didn't talk about it. I figured, why bother her about it? When we were going to court, obviously, we talked about it, I've got to go out and do this and do that. But there was no reason to talk about it.
No, we just went on with our lives.
Denny and I talked about it.
Really.
We hashed it. Well, being there when the FBI came, and they had asked me to leave, of course,
Yeah.
and he hadn't been home maybe a week. They were at the door, and kid you not, this is the way my mind works. The 2 agents that showed up, remember this is in the 70s, so the 2 agents showed up. Couldn't look more FBI if you wanted to. They flashed their badges and everything, said they had to take his deposition, and asked me to leave. I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. And I said, anything he has to say, I've heard it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's under doctor's care, I'm not leaving. Well, we are medically trained, if anything would come up, we can, not gonna happen. If you wanna come in, I'll gladly put some coffee in, come in. The guy said, well, we can't do that. So they literally left for a little while. Again, we don't have cell phones, right?
Right.
So they left and came back about a half hour, 40 minutes later and said, okay, you can stay, but would you mind, going outside or another part of the house? We lived in a little twinplex, split level twinplex. I said, no, I'm staying right here. Now, do you want to come in or don't you? They left again. They came back and finally said it was okay that I stay.
Wow.
Thank the good Lord they did.
Yes.
Because we sat there in that little living room. He picked out Allison Krauss, Jeffrey Miller, out of these piles and piles of black and white glossy pictures of they had been taken, you know, FBI was there the whole time as they were taking all these pictures of the students and some of the guards and everybody. You know, it's just, they were taking all of these pictures. And he had to go through pictures and things like that. And he, not knowing a name, he had not watched TV. As you can see from my letter, I canceled the Beacon Journal, so he was not reading any news. And he picked these two out, and they asked how he knew. And he said, well, and he remembered, it was down by a tree. She was spitting in his face. Miller was cussing like crazy, and the guards just pushed him back. You know, they finally gave up because there was enough guardsmen there, and he pushed him back. And he went on. So, as he had went through all of that, and I imagine your deposition was the same. Legal pad, yellow, handwritten by the two guardsmen. When he was done, we had to sit, and I sat right beside him and read that deposition, because he had to initial each line.
You mean the two FBI agents?
Had to say that again, please?
You mean two FBI agents had yellow pads?
They gave us, yeah, they had the
Yeah.
yellow pads and wrote out the deposition. But then afterwards, you had to read it before you signed it. What, I don't know if you did, but Denny, when he read it, had to initial it, going down. Yes, I said this, yes, I said this. Then at the bottom, he had to sign it. After that, he had to do he was okayed enough to go up and do the state highway patrols. He went up. Oh, before that, when the FBI was in our home, they did say when he told them he heard the single shot and looked above on the, thinking it came from a roof of the building behind him, they said they were there. They were up on the roofs of the buildings, because that's how you could tell the pictures that they got and everything. They were down on the crowd. They admitted they were there. They then also said, you guys don't have to worry. You were there because your government sent you, and we're here to help. Then he went up to the State Highway Patrol. I was not there with that deposition. I didn't hear it, didn't see it. So we went on about our lives, but it was part of it, because we had just sold our home. We were trying to figure out, well, how do you make a plans to do anything? You know, because they'll take it, because we had been served with a $10 million suit. And it was Rhodes, Canterbury, DeCorso, Pryor, Breckenridge, and it was not in alphabetical order the rest of the way to the Guardsmen. And the only thing I can think of is because he went down. Because that was the picture hit the newspaper, picture hit there, and everything. So, that's the only reason I can think of his name was at the top. But anyways, that's when, you know, we thought we were safe. Wrong. And I was at work
How long did we fight for that?
10 years. Went up to, well, it was 10 years for your MIB. I don't remember how long Kent State was. How long was Kent State for you guys had the indictments? What?
How long was the trial?
No, how long after the shooting? Because it was what, 2 years? 3 years?
About 2 years.
Yeah, because I was at Goodyear. No, I was at another job at that time.
We just moved in our house.
Okay,
We had a brand new house and just moved into it, and I said, okay, well, there goes that.
yeah, that's exactly what we did, but we figured we'd sell. You were smart to stay at yours, but I was at work, and Denny was up with Lambros, and by that time you had Lambros as your attorney,
Right.
and he was up with him. And he called me and said, Attorney Lambros would like to speak with you. And I said, what for? And he says, well, all I can say is there's something wrong with my deposition. And he wants to speak to you. Now, I left work. Now I had to leave. I go up and they hand me this typewritten deposition. And I'm reading it and I'm getting ticked. Because I know that's not what he said. I mean, if we wouldn't have discussed this day in, day out, and, you know, what was going on and how much it was bothering him and everything, I would not have probably even known. But I'm reading this and I'm just looking at the attorney. I says, I really don't care what those students or that student had to say. That's not what happened. And Lambro says, would you please read the whole document? Kind of stern. So I did, and here's Denny's name sprawled across the bottom of it. And I just looked at him and goes, when in the hell did you sign a typewritten deposition? Because I'm always with him.
Right.
He said, I never did. And I says, that's what I thought. And I got looking at it again just as I picked this paper up. And of course, back then, you know, you'd have the deposition part all typed and everything, and you got this paragraph. And it first started sounding fairly good. And then you go down to the next paragraph, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No. And then you could see where I used to do it at work. If you wanted to change something around, we didn't have word processors. We had an IBM selected typewriter. You'd cut, you paste, and then you'd make a photocopy of it. And that's exactly what it was. And I told Lambros, I said, you have your secretary come in and take a look at this and tell her not necessarily read it, but look at the overall document and see what she says. Is this an original document, a photocopy of the original document, or has anything been changed on that document? And she looked at him, she took it and she's looking at him like, well, that's a dumb request. She looks at it and she goes, oh, well, I would have to honestly say that this was a copy of a copy that was made that where things have been cut and pasted. And Lambro says, you will be going to court. And he said, do not tell anybody other than you two know it, but not one of the guardsmen had a witness to their deposition. It was always two guards, or two FBI agents, one guardsman.
For a reason.
For a reason. Always. And he says, I cannot believe this. It was the nail in the coffin for that trial. Because they said, you can't charge somebody on falsified information. Court date came. I don't know how many of you guys had testified by then, but Denny got up, gave his name, rank, serial number. They handed him that deposition that they were charging all of you with. The whole, grand jury was over. He says, told me I couldn't come up with Denny. Denny was on the witness stand, name, rank, serial number, handing the deposition. Prosecutor says, is this your deposition? Is this your deposition? Denny says, no, it is not. But he flips over to his Denny's signature and says, is that not your signature? And Denny says, that is a photocopy of my signature. But I didn't sign this document. And of course they started adding over the document. What do you mean? And finally, Lambro stood up and said, we have a witness waiting to testify that was there during the entire FBI deposition. She witnessed every bit of it and can testify he never, due to his health, and what happened at Kent State was never went and given a second deposition by the FBI, never seen or signed a typewritten written deposition, and they cleared the courtroom.
And that's when the record skipped.
And that's when it went, yeah.
And the judge cleared the courtroom.
Oh yeah,
He was livid.
he was ticked.
I'm sure that he was trying to parlay his job is a federal judge. He was trying to parlay it into something bigger, like maybe Ohio Supreme Court, something like that. But,
You didn't wanna hear from me.
and he was used, it was political.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much as I didn't understand it then, it was political. He was trying to get that case tried and get us convicted, so he would have that feather in his cap, and I'm sure it would parlay him on up to a bigger position.
You're referring to Judge Battisti.
Yes, I am. Big fat. Time for the duct tape. But anyway, everybody went outside, and that's when our attorney said, "This is over.
Mm-hmm, go home.
This is all over, go home. It's been thrown out of court."
And that's when a bailiff came in, a big bailiff came in, told me to go home, do not speak to anybody on my way out of the court. Matter of fact, he walked out with me, make sure I didn't talk to any of you guys that were out there. And no one knew what happened, did you?
Didn't know that it was you. All we
Yeah.
knew that something happened
Big time,
that caused an uproar, and Battisti was,
ticked.
yeah, you could have lit a cigarette off of his head.
He was that ticked, yeah, I was
Yeah.
told that.
He just cleared the courtroom, and then when we went out in the hallway, that's when Attorney Lambros said, "Go home, this is over. It's been thrown out of court."
And I went on home, and I didn't have to go back into work, I just went home, and then he come in, he goes, "Well, that went well." I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "I got escorted out of, witness box and sent, Denny was out there with you guys, wasn't he? Because he didn't come home right away.
I don't know.
Remember, but I know I
All
wasn't
I know
on
is
the top.
whenever he was around, I got in trouble.
Not that time.
No, not that.
Not that time. But so, yeah, because he was a little later coming home, but I know he didn't tell you guys what happened either, because he wasn't allowed. We still.
I'm not sure he knew.
Oh, he knew. Yeah, he knew. Because he knows I was the only one, because Lambros told us when I was up there.
But
that-
as young as we were, not all of us, we didn't know a lot about the law.
No, but I mean, he knew I was gonna testify
Oh, yeah,
next.
yeah.
And they shut it down after Lambros stood up and said, "Well, we've got a witness." And he was shoved out and I was sent home.
We were the age of innocence.
Yeah.
We didn't know anything. We were young. We're all in our 20s. We didn't know how the law worked.
And we believed in our
We
agencies,
believed in our government.
FBI and our government. And,
We did.
I mean, they had our back, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Morris, did any sort of, not sure what the word would be, camaraderie or a friendship or relationship kind of develop between you and the other 7, kind of in the course of the trial?
No, the ones that were close to me before the trial were the ones same. I mean, I had the same friends before and after.
But there wasn't contact, other than
No.
Cleveland court dates.
No. Some of the guys I didn't really like anyway, to tell you the truth. That's just me. I picked my own friends, and they weren't part of the group. I associated with them at guard meetings and, friendly and stuff like that, but to go drink a beer with them, no. Not gonna happen.
Do either of you recall instances, where you were treated poorly because people had kind of figured out or heard that you had been a guardsman?
Oh yeah, I've been called kid killer many times. Not up close. Being in my 20s and not having much of a filter, which I still don't have much of a filter, but it was always done from a distance, maybe from like a phone call when they published that. They come out with that movie about Kent State. It was in the 70s, and it was all slanted towards the college kids. And we got a couple of calls. Said, hey, we know where you're at, we're blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, you got the address, come on up. I've got a 5-gallon gas can and it's full, come on up, see if you can get back down the steps.
Poor guy.
We were fortunate, we really didn't get those type of calls or anything. I don't recall him ever
No.
coming home and saying anything
We
like
changed
that.
we changed our number after.
Yeah, we did too, and, but we did have a couple reporters,
Yeah.
and we just would not talk to them, because the one time we talked to one of them, it got switched around. And it wasn't much, but it was enough that it was switched completely around. That was the end of it.
But Trudy she was at home at night, because I worked night shift
Yeah.
as a supervisor at that time. And
Janelle was about 7 months old, my
Yeah.
daughter.
Mhm.
So it was her and I there by ourselves in our new home. And somebody come to the front door while I went to the door, and it was a reporter. And he wanted to ask some questions. I said, no, I don't know how he knew where we lived. That bothered me.
no matter public record, it was all
Well, I
easy to
didn't
find
know.
out. But
Yeah.
Down and down.
I left my
Me
position
neither.
at work as a supervisor and went back to the floor being a machine operator, just so that I could be on day shift, so that I didn't have to worry about her at night. So, I mean, there's a lot of changes, a lot of losses and stuff like that this caused, but, you know.
And somebody dropped off, remember those books? We gave them to Maddie or Taylor.
Yeah.
In the, like a baggie or something.
Mhm.
Never did open them, did we?
No,
Never read them. Dropped them off on the front porch. Don't know who it was, never saw anybody else, but you saw these books.
How they doing?
Morris says, you live in Kent.
yes. And did at the time.
And did at the time. I'm curious, I mean, did you ever think about leaving?
No.
No. I'm really, I'm not an ugly person, but I'm not the guy you wanna push. I don't push very easy.
But the people that I worked with, he worked with, they knew what was going on because I worked at that place when all of this was going on. So everybody knew what was going on,
Yeah.
but they were still our friends.
Same with my employment,
Nobody
his employment.
shunned us.
No, really. I mean, those who live in this area, the Suffield, Brimfield, Kent, Stowe area, they knew.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew Kent was a college town, cute little cafes and store owners who have been there
Yeah.
all their lives.
Yeah.
They destroyed it,
Yes.
and none of that gets published.
No.
Nothing is said that some of those people lost their living because of this peaceful so-called rise.
Full
Yeah,
protests.
yeah. And they literally lost their living. And
And my
it took years to get started
Oh,
back.
yeah, my
Yeah.
granddaughter, the oldest granddaughter, she was dating a guy, he was out of school, he went to Kent State. And she, she didn't know, she started dating, that Michael.
Yeah.
And when he found out that he was her grandfather, he started in on her.
No way.
Oh, yeah, your grandpa's a child killer and this and that, out.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
see, he had
that's
his,
years later.
yeah, his cousin, and his wife now were, students there. And they're both became teachers in that. And Harold said, they announced in class is closed, get off the campus. And he had said someone had passed around, go to the commons, this noontime thing. They left.
Mhm.
They left. And even Denny said that Sandy Schroeder that was
Yeah.
hurt or killed, it was in the park. That is a possibility. The National Guard you guys had M1s, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a pistol.
You had a pistol, he had an M1. They travel. The National Guard, the Army reservists that were over at Akron Canton Airport were stationed over there. They had the riot equipment. You were infantry.
It's because that's where headquarters was.
Yeah, but you guys didn't have the riot equipment. They were infantry, tanks, you know, M1s. But that's who they sent.
No, we hadn't advanced far enough in crowd control.
Yeah,
That we even knew what the right equipment was.
yeah, and that's why your knowledge, weren't given the right tools, but your knowledge got you there. And it's typical government. You got the knowledge, but we're not going to use that part. We'll give you the opposite stuff. But no, I'm just saying that, you know, June Harold and Wanda both said we were told to leave, and we left. We knew, you know, students talk.
Sure
Says
they
we knew to leave, and most of the ones who were there were not even students of Kent State.
That's what we heard.
Well, the one thing that bothers me, it still bothers me to this day, because of the news and what's going on right now. But when I gave my deposition to the FBI, I walked in and they said, "We need your weapon." So I cleared my weapon, laid it on the table, and they asked me for the serial number. I gave them the serial number, and they took my weapon. And they said, "Don't worry about it, we're on your side." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I figured, okay, there's two guys from the government who I respected, FBI, and they said, "Don't worry, we're on your side." So I figured, okay, they know that this thing was all a problem. When we go to court, they ask you questions and they say, "Well, what about this?" And I say, "Well, the FBI told me they were on our side." I said, "You know, that's what they told me." And they asked the FBI agents, they got it there, "Did you say that?" "I don't recall." "Well, I don't recall." So the attorney had said, "Well, let me see if this refreshes your memory." And the judge said, he said he doesn't recall in the conversation. But when one of the guards was on the stand and you said, "I don't remember." "Well, let me see if this refreshes your memory." "No." "Well, let me see if this refreshes your memory." And there would be an objection, overruled. And they would just keep on badgering his questions, but the FBI, they got a pass, first time. "Don't recall, no more questions." And that still bothers me to this day, that they were allowed to drag us around and badger us, but as far as the FBI is concerned, no.
We didn't look at you one time.
Remember earlier?
Mr. Morris, during the trial, you were taken back to the campus.
Yes,
Was that the first time that you had been back on the campus?
yes.
Tell us about that experience, going back, you know, being there on the request of the court.
Just, you know, it wasn't like a bad thing, it wasn't like a good thing, it was just a thing. The court ordered us to go there, so we went there and stood on the hill and looked over this so that everybody else could. I think the jury went too, I'm not sure. But it was just something that we were ordered to do. And we did it. And like I said, it didn't bring back any bad memories, it didn't bring any good memories, it just like, let me get the hell out of here.
Over the last 50 years, have your feelings about the Kent State situation, have they changed at all in
No.
5 decades?
I don't think they have.
No, I mean, we were called to do a job, and we did the job with the tools that we had. I always felt that they were wrong. The that they were destroying the town. They were destroying the emergency equipment that was sent up there and put out the fires. They hurt firemen, they hurt policemen, they hurt National Guardsmen. It just, nothing's changed. I mean, I wish that 4 people hadn't died. And I wish I wouldn't have been part of it, but I was part of it. And that's all there is. It's just a piece of history, you know, by doing this or doing that, and by having a service a memorial service every year, it doesn't change anything. If they want to have a memorial to it, that's fine. But it doesn't change history.
How often have either one of you spoken publicly about this?
Never,
Ever.
never.
How often have you been approached?
Many
to
times.
talk
Many
about
times,
this?
yeah,
Many
many
times.
times. Many times.
Many times. A lot of it was people that were just trying to write a book and make some money.
Correct.
I would say that was 99% of it. You're the 1%.
Well, and the rest of them were the old thing, we're on your side, we want to get your version out. Just kept, it hit a sour note.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the only reason you got in the door, historian,
Mm-hmm.
because you're more likely, you want to know the history. You want to know what really,
Right. You want
that
the truth.
side, the truth. And the other thing that you were saying, they were like destroying towns or injuring firemen and everything like that. If we look at today, and we look at any other country, and people come in and start, it's an army fight. They don't sit there and start blaming the army comes in to protect the town or the people. And that's basically what you were doing, protecting the town
Right.
and the people, and you were persecuted for it. And your own government sent you in. Then your own government came back to sue you and persecute you over it. It doesn't make sense. It really rattles your beliefs.
Well, Arlo Guthrie's wrote the song, "Times They Are A-Changin'."
That's true.
That's when they started.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. To this day, I'll say that was the era that started us to where we are today.
Yep.
I truly
Mhm.
believe that. And my own opinion, the rudeness of people today, it's mine, it's my way, you know, you have no right.
Yeah.
I think
the
that
Vietnam
just
War
pushes-
was behind all of it.
Yes, it was. It really was.
That was
We
it.
lost many friends.
That was the reason for the riot on the campus.
Yeah.
It was all about not wanting to go to Vietnam.
Mhm. And most of you didn't want to go to Vietnam, so that's why you were in the Guards, you know.
Nobody
But
wanted,
no one wanted to go over
nobody
there.
wanted to go.
No. It's, you know,
But if you got ordered to go, you went.
that's right. You did your duty.
There's a school bus.
I am, no, I'm not doing anything.
The first, the criminal trial ended with an acquittal.
Yes.
And then 2 or 3 years later, there was a civil trial.
Civil trial.
What do you remember about this time around?
It's completely different than the criminal trial. Civil trial was like a circus. I mean, those lawyers were asking all kinds of weird questions, and they had more of an open format to ask questions because they were after one thing, money. Criminal trial, that was because they wanted to put somebody in jail, and some judge wanted to be where he wasn't. He wanted to be in a higher position. That's my opinion. But the civil trials, they were just rather loose. Had a lot more latitude to say things, you know, without proof. You know, they didn't have to prove that you said this. They could just say, well, you said this.
this is over 50 years since your guard duty came to an end. How many guardsmen are you still in touch with that you served with?
One. My brother.
Your brother. Yep.
All of that you were passed on, haven't they?
Yeah.
Other than Barry.
Has the narrative of the Kent State shootings been fair to the Ohio National Guard?
Oh, wait.
Not even close. It's very one-sided, very biased. And I think
They were
because,
fake, they were fake news then, they're fake news now.
well, and you gotta remember, Kent State's a liberal arts
Yes.
college.
Right.
So the stuff that's coming out of there is from liberal arts. Students, former students, professors.
Mhm.
Sorry, but professors and that, and they have a different perspective, different view of things.
Now Taylor went to Kent State for what, a year? 2 years?
2 years.
Then she transferred down to Tennessee. And she told about some of the professors and their beliefs and stuff like that. And she said, you know, I'm not buying all of that. And I said, good for you. Stand up for yourself.
And what's sad today, and my grandson, who's just 21, and my 16-year-old granddaughter, many of the teachers today, when they get into history, still make it favorable to the students
Absolutely.
and not wanting to even talk about the other side.
They don't
It's-
know the other side.
Well, and they don't want to hear the other side. That's
Right.
the bad part.
The-
Instead of being open to
Yeah,
hearing.
the teachers today have one source, and that's what's been written.
Yes.
And what's been written and published is not favorable to the guards, so
Not at all.
that's what they teach. If they're open about it, they don't push either one,
Either way.
but they do have a bias,
Mhm.
a lot of them.
And our teachers are what indoctrinate our kids.
Mhm.
And depending on the child, can persuade their way of thinking, change their way of thinking. And if they don't have the information, and that's one of the reasons when you told me you were a historian, I thought this might be a good time. It's a time. With Morgan bringing it up, you need to get it in history.
Right.
And that's the only way it's going to change, is if the other side is actually there when they go to research anything, if anybody will, that it shows a different side of it. They're going to draw their own
I
conclusion.
don't think anybody, it's as the story now will ever change.
You're probably right on that. I don't know.
Do either of you have any mementos from your time in the National Guard?
Like,
Newspaper clippings, your uniform, helmet, just
Oh.
stuff.
my mom kept a lot of newspaper clippings and gave them to me.
As you see with mine, I wrote the letter to the Beacon Journal, I have that clipping. My grandmother kept the clipping that shows the aftermath, what was all going on again. And after I wrote to the Beacon Journal, I got several letters from people that wrote to us. And it was kind of funny because our address and stuff wasn't in the Beacon Journal, but in a couple of them, I should have kept the envelopes, actually were to National Guardsmen, Suffield, Ohio, Breckenridge, and we got the mail, So it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
But,
One of the biggest things that bothers me, and of course this still bothers me like the other one I told you about, but I'm not the greatest Christian, but I do believe, and the church that I belong to, the Methodist, they actually had a group of people that gathered money to help prosecute the National Guard. So
wow.
there went my faith out the window, at least my faith in the Methodist church. Why would a church be doing that?
That's sad. I never heard that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never told anybody, but it's kind of tough, you know,
Yeah, it is.
because, you know, we went to church pretty regular on Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Wow. It really changed all of our lives, didn't
It's-
it?
It did, a lot of changes.
It's funny.
I think it's good to hear somebody like you.
I agree.
I agree.
Here's a different kind of question. In the last couple of years, I mean, there have been episodes that have been on television, you know, with riots and crowd control. June 2020 in Minnesota after George Floyd died, and then the following January at the U.S. Capitol. Are there parallels to those recent episodes to what you guys did in the late '60s riots and at Kent State?
The only parallel is what they were doing, tearing up something that didn't belong to them, that other people had paid for
And worked for it.
and worked for. Tearing that stuff up. That's the only parallel. Violence is violence.
That's right.
And those violence that we just witnessed the last couple of years, they would have been done and over with if they would have brought the National Guard in, but they didn't.
Well, now they're afraid to,
Right.
because no matter
Well, then,
what guardsmen they bring in, if there's consequences, the guards are gonna get in trouble for
well,
it.
those governors, those liberal governors wouldn't let the Guard be called out.
Yeah,
So they're the ones that actually had their cities destroyed. The military is the only way that you can get something like that quelled in a hurry. The police department's not big enough, or else you'd have to draw from everywhere. But
yeah, because most of these towns are small. and-
it takes the military
Yeah, even
to quell.
cities.
That was a full-blown riot. All of those were. And the military could have quelled it because of superior force. Everybody knows that. Superior force, everybody goes down. I may be mad, and I would be cussing when they go down the street, but your town is safe.
Don't you remember? There were the riots were going, like, I don't know, 30, 60 days after. It was right back to where it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, never got over it.
Mm-mm.
Every May 4th, you know, the Akron Beacon Journal will do an anniversary piece in the newspaper. And I'm curious if when you see these pieces, do you think about your role as kind of as an historical actor, that you were there? I mean, that was over half a century ago, but you were there. You saw this with your own eyes.
Nobody wanted to hear our side. I just click.
I don't read them.
I don't either.
We don't
Click.
like the Beacon, never did. I don't like them.
I don't care. I know my part in history, and I know my role in history, and I know that members of my family who've gone to different colleges and stuff, we happened to see them. Her nephew said, "Hey, I was in class the other day, and I saw your name in a book." Yeah, it was about Kent State. It was Marquette University, way up in the top of Michigan. You know, Indians and salmon up there. That's all I know.
Northern Michigan University in Marquette, Michigan. Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, that's about it. You know, I know it's history, and people like to talk about it, but I don't.
Is there any question or topic that I have not asked that you want to comment on?
All right, you did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I mean, other than going freestyle, if I was going to write a book or something, and I'd go from the very beginning, you know, what I was doing, where I was at. This covers it pretty good, you know, we got our feelings out. And got our truths out.
Well, thank you all. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
You're welcome. Thank you
I
for
appreciate it.
putting this in the history.